Hey guys, welcome back to my garden. If you're new here, my name is Kiera. Feel free to call me Q. And in the garden today, we are going to harvest everything. So this was the day that I came out and harvested every single thing that I possibly could from our summer garden. Now, this was originally shot a couple days after Thanksgiving. I think it was probably 2 days after. And at the time, our weather kept saying that we were in like 36, 37 degrees Fahrenheit for our lows at nighttime. But then the next day, it would say that the low was like 35 or 34. And so we had a lot of stuff that was definitely getting some frost pressure from the low temperatures at nighttime, and I noticed a lot of stuff was just dying, the tops of the peppers and eggplants and all of that kind of stuff. And so I just decided that, it was time to just get our very last harvest from the summer garden out. A couple weeks have passed now that I'm recording this and putting it together, and so now we've had a couple frosts here. We never freeze too hard. Our lows will get probably around the 30s sometimes. We still have nights that are even in the 40s, but we have definitely had our first official frost at 32 degrees. We do live in a climate where we can garden outside year round, which I'm really grateful for. We're in zone 9. I think with the new USDA classification, we're still zone 9, but basically what that means for you is that we don't get very many days that are 32 degrees, and then past that we don't get snow or anything like that here, and so it's a pretty mild climate as far as winters go. Now here in the garden, what I'm doing mostly is picking peppers. So I planted a lot of pepper plants this year. It wasn't really intentional. I started a bunch of peppers, they weren't germinating, so I started another round, and then with all of that ended up with 140 pepper plants, which is a lot for anybody, but especially when you're talking about just two people, it is a lot. And I think that, all said and done in the garden, probably like 100 of them survived. I counted at one point and I think there was like 100 or so. And they did okay. Peppers is one of those things where we got a lot because we had a ton of plants, but it is one of those things that I want to get better at growing them, just because my peppers are never really like big and bushy like they could be. And so it is one of those things that, I'm getting a little bit better every year. And so some of these plants, like these jalapenos, we usually take those when they're red. But now that I'm harvesting everything, I'm taking all the green ones. Same thing with the poblanos. We are taking all of those. They're still kind of small, but we really are just getting every single piece of fruit that we can out of this garden. At the end of this day, I think I ended up with something like 10 pounds of peppers, which was really amazing. And it was all different types. And so I'm really proud of what we were able to accomplish this year in this garden. Here are some of those poblanos. So these are supposed to be a lot bigger than they got. They're still, we're really good. Andrew was happy with them. We're going to use them for salsa and stuff like that. But this was one of the peppers that I was really surprised with how small the fruit was throughout the entire growing season. So I don't know if it was just the spot they were in, maybe it wasn't enough nutrients. Well, no, actually this was one of our beds that we had brand new soil in it. So I'm not sure what happened here, but they're still good and we're still happy with them. And those are all of our poblanos there with the jalapenos underneath. All right, so now on to the bean plants. So this was our last bean arch trellis that we had. The funny thing about this is these two sides of this trellis were actually planted first, and they did really, really poorly at the beginning of the season, and they weren't growing at all. And so I did another arch on the other side of our garden that just grew into this like massive, beautiful thing. And we got so many beans off of this. And these were all Blue Lake pole beans, by the way. But anyway, in the time that the other arch really took off in kind of the cooler, shadier part of our garden, these started to kind of like get into gear. So it was really nice to be able to have these here. And it was kind of like 3 different succession sowings of pole beans, even though it was really just 2. It was really nice to have these at the end of the season after we had already taken out that other big arch, to still be getting, at least a meal's worth of beans here and there. I think my arches were definitely the favorite part of the garden. I had 3 of them that were just amazing to me this year, and I love growing things vertically. I think that it's a great way to use space, especially if you are growing in a backyard, or don't have a lot of space or something like that. Our garden this year is a pretty good size. Oh, this is to show you, we had aphids, but we also had a lot of ladybugs. And later, as I was taking these plants down, they were just covered in ladybugs. And I did move as many of them as I could. I went and put them on our orange trees, which we weren't obviously taking out, and because I wanted to give them kind of a place to stay a little bit longer in the garden. We work really hard to make it a good ladybug habitat, and so I want to give them a place to stay even after we take things out. But anyway, what I was saying is I really love growing on arch trellises. I think they're fantastic, and they're really beautiful. Like, I think that once things fill in, to be able to kind of like walk underneath them and see how the sun goes through them, have all of your fruits hanging down, and they're easily accessible, they're cleaner, there's less bugs in general on them because they're not laying on the ground. You actually end up harvesting more from your food because you're not missing as much, because again, it's not just on the ground covered in leaves. And so yeah, I really, really love growing in arch trellises. And this is just another example of a pepper plant that just had a ton of fruit at the end, which was really awesome. This was a butternut squash. I planted this at the beginning of the season, probably like 3 different times, and they just never took off. They never did anything. And then this fall, these plants finally started to grow, and that was really sad because there just wasn't enough time in the season. They take a really long time to grow. It's usually around 100 days. And so, something like that growing for us in October, usually it's not going to have enough days to fully produce. But I'm going to try again next year. I'm going to see if I can get them planted on the shadier side of our garden and see if they do better over there. One thing that really surprised me as we went into the season was how many peppers we had, this time of year. This was like my best pepper section. We got so much out of this little corner. There were probably like 5 or 6 plants right here, and they all did really, really well. I don't know what that was, but these got really bushy, and there was just a ton of fruit on them. These are habanadas that I'm pulling off right here. So they are a sweet, non-spicy version of a habanero. So they have like the tropical kind of like, the tropical flavor of them without any of the heat. And we love putting those in like different chilies and stuff like that. We got, I think like 3-gallon bags of those this season. And then the other one that I'm pulling off, these little red ones, these are sweet bonnets, and they're the sweet, non-spicy version of a Scotch bonnet. They do have like a little bit of kick to them, but it's not that bad. I'm a lightweight and I can't handle any kind of heat, and they're fine for me. We probably won't grow those again just because the flavor on their own, it was very similar to some of the Italian peppers or just sweet peppers that we grow. So flavor on their own, it's not unique enough for us, but it was great to try them out, and we got a lot of those too. I will say with both of these, it was kind of sad not being able to pull every single one off the plants here. I took the ones that had any color at all, so not just the ripe ones. I took like ones that were pale, or with the sweet bonnets, I took the ones that were orange, which they turn orange right before they turn red. And just to see if we could get as much as we possibly could and get some flavor out of them. But these plants were just loaded up with green fruit. So it was really sad to leave that. And then we also had some just other like Italian peppers and Edgevarsky peppers, which we tried for the first time this year and really, really loved. Just in general, just sweet peppers mixed in with these. And this corner was just amazing with the amount of food that came out of this little, I want to say it was probably like 2 foot by 3 foot, maybe not even that, it might have been 2 by 2 section of our garden. One of the reasons that I think that they did so well is because this section was facing our west facing sun, but they also had really big cucumber plants and bean plants kind of protecting them in trellises nearby. So I think they got warm enough, but they weren't just like blasted with all of the sunshine throughout the day. And I think that that really helped with creating kind of like the perfect environment for these peppers to thrive. This was our pumpkin vine, and as I was going, I found another pumpkin. So I ended up taking this guy out. And the funny thing is I think it was a couple days after this when I actually took this plant out and completely cleared out these beds. I found another pumpkin on this vine. So I got 3 surprise pumpkins on this one vine this year, which was really awesome. So these last 2, we have them in the house. This one is actually pretty orange now, and so it ripened up a lot more. The other one, it's getting there, but it's still kind of green, so I don't know if it's going to do anything. But we are giving them a try, and we're going to see if we can get these sugar pie pumpkins fully ripened. And then what I do is I roast them, puree them, and then store them for, pumpkin goodies throughout the winter and spring. This is our very back bed. This is an eggplant jungle. These eggplants grew a little weird because they were completely buried at one point by a gigantic zucchini plant early in the season. Then they also had huge okra plants growing on the other side of them. And the grass in this bed, you can see it's also pretty crazy. I went through a couple times and cleared out all this grass, but it was already in the bed. What we've done is we filled these beds with leaves to add some more organic matter, and then we covered them with tarps until spring. The other thing about our eggplants is none of them really did very well this year. They were big and beautiful and they grew really well, but as far as producing eggplants, it was kind of a dud of a year. But one thing that was really cool is even though I'm pulling a lot of green peppers off of all of these plants, and we do prefer kind of like when they change color, I got a lot of really big ones, and I was really surprised by that. Like with the weather cooling down, the plants or the peppers were definitely still growing, even if they weren't ripening as much. They were getting a lot bigger, and so you can see these are really good size peppers, especially for these scrawny, struggling plants that I'm pulling them off of. And this back bed was the bed that I thought we would get just the least amount of stuff off of, because like I said, this corner especially was covered with a gigantic zucchini plant, and so all of these peppers suffered in the beginning. They were just completely buried, and I dug them out when I took out the zucchini, and I was actually surprised to see that some of them were still alive. Next year I will definitely give the zucchini plants way more space. I always think that I'm giving them enough space because they're so small, going in, and for weeks and weeks you just think like, wow, this is too much space for this little thing. But they always get way bigger than I plan for, even with trying to give them, like 4 feet of bed in a whole bunch of directions. Like they still somehow always get bigger than that, and I still always plant stuff too close. So that is another note for next year, is to just keep giving the zucchinis more space, especially with things like peppers and stuff like that that's going to stay in the garden all year. And this is the other side of the garden. This is kind of the shadier area. This was the one that Went in a little bit later, and this was the side of the garden that we had last year. So we had built these beds the year before, and then we just kind of topped them off this year. So these plants actually did pretty well too. We got a lot of food off of these throughout the year, which was really great. Yeah, it's a lot less grass over here in the beds. It's all just like a little bit neater. I loved this. I loved the colors on these, the like red, orange, and almost yellow. It was like a little Christmas plant pulling these little sweet bonnets off. But anyway, yeah, this side of the garden is just a lot less cluttered because there's not crazy weeds everywhere, and the grass hasn't taken over the beds and stuff like that. So this was the side of the bed that always just made me feel a little bit calmer, and it was just a lot easier to maintain. And you can see like none of these peppers are as bushy as they should be, but we still got a lot of food off of them, which was really nice. I absolutely love growing our own food. It was something that I started in 2020. As a person who thought I couldn't grow anything, and my whole life I was like, I have a black thumb, I kill plants. But I decided to try and give gardening a go. My husband was really encouraging for that, and he just wanted us to, try, and if we failed, then we failed. But I don't like failing. It's hard for me. But anyway, it is one of those things where I tried it, and it just gave me so much more than I expected to get from the entire process, not just the food. And the food is amazing. Like, I love being able to pick things out of our backyard and go into the house and make really great food with it. I love especially being able to share it with people, whether it's giving people, an entire basket of peppers to take home, or an entire basket of tomatoes to take home, or, handfuls and handfuls of basil so that they can make pesto. I love giving people things out of the garden that way, but I also just love sharing it in meals. So when we cook for people and have them over, I love creating the whole experience for them and being able to tell them, what we grew and all of that kind of stuff, and just kind of tell the story of the food that we spent a lot of time and put a lot of love into making for them. Gardening has been an incredibly rewarding journey for me, and it's something that I will do from now on. And as the 2023 garden is now officially closed, this is what I have to look forward to for winter. And here's our final haul. It was about, I want to say, 10 pounds of peppers. And yeah, this was just a really amazing gardening year. I'm really proud of what I accomplished myself and what we accomplished as a family. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.